Hello, my name is Simone Maurer. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm recording this presentation on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This presentation is a collection of personal tried and tested tips from my own experiences and research in the topics of productivity, motivation and procrastination. This is not intended to be all-inclusive, and I recognise that not everyone will benefit from these suggestions, which they may already be aware of. Rather, this is intended as a broad introduction from which you can pick and choose topics to pursue further. I'm currently a resident tutor at Queen's College, a PhD researcher at the University of Melbourne, a tutor at the Melbourne Conservatorium of Music, a long-distance flute lecturer for the Central Queensland University, and a certified movement analyst from the Laban Bartenieff Institute of Movement Studies in New York City. Our first topic is preparing for productivity. By this I mean preparing the context and environment in which you will be working. I want you to consider how you prepare yourself each day, literally from the moment you wake up. This may seem unnecessary or obvious, but a solid pre-work or study routine can effectively establish productivity. I like to set my alarm a bit earlier to allow myself time to gently stretch in bed or scroll through the news on my phone. The important message here being that you should factor in the time to allow yourself to do that. There's nothing wrong with having a scroll through your news feeds before you get moving, as long as it's intended and factored in. There are many articles online saying that the most successful people don't look at their phone for the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day. I respect and admire that, but I found a system that works for me. And you should too. Then choose an activity that indicates that it's time to start the day. For me, it's writing my daily to-do list. Everything I do following has to be PhD, college, tutoring or lecturing related. I use nice stationery and a daily planner, which motivates me to get to my desk. Some professional writers even adopt a writing uniform, which could be as simple as wearing a hat to help transition into their writing role. In the timeline of my day, I do all my admin or menial tasks before writing my to-do list. I do my workout, answer my personal emails or messages, do my laundry, etc. I need to get them done, but doing them prior to my start of the day activity helps to solidify my boundaries and change gears into work mode. I spend a few minutes squaring up my work area before I begin. An organised desk helps me to organise my mind. It doesn't take long because I do it every day, so the clutter that accumulates is minimal. And this extends to making sure that I have everything I need to start my workday, including things like a water bottle to keep hydrated and a sweater in case I cool down while sitting still. I also like to prepare items for my break so that I know my reward is coming. That might be having my teacup and a tea bag on the bench waiting, or my shoes and socks near the door ready to put on and go for a walk break. My to-do list involves setting my intentions and goals for the day. I'm currently using this daily planner from Collective Hub as my template, but there are many free ones available online and you can even design and personalize your own. In the past, I used to write a general list on sticky notes or a scrap of paper in conjunction with my timetable when I felt busy. However, throughout my graduate studies, I noticed many of my lecturers and professors set really specific daily goals. For example, they might have 3 main things that they wanted to accomplish for the day, but then they broke them down into bite-sized pieces. I've been following this model for the last few years, and it's not only helped me to get more done during the day, but it's stopped me from feeling so overwhelmed. Also, how good does it feel to tick off a task? The science behind that being checking off a task releases dopamine, which is a very powerful motivator. That's my schedule on a micro daily level, But before you get there, you should also consider your bigger weekly or monthly schedule. And to be productive, I recommend a fixed schedule. Start by mapping out your absolute study, work, and life priorities. How many hours do you have to work for your part-time job? How many hours do you have to spend watching lecture videos and attending tutorials? And how many hours do you need of socialization or other life commitments? You can literally work out a weekly average of hours for these categories. Then figure out when is the best time for you to study. Are you a morning person or more of a night owl? Find out and work to that efficiency because you'll get more done at a better quality. Then I suggest fixing in your study as appointments in your calendar or schedule and treat them as such, like having to show up to your job. It's harder when you are your own boss for studying, and I've got some tips for that later on. Essentially, you want to prioritize your appointments. This means risking annoying other people. Your friends might want you to join their Netflix watching party, but you should stick to your appointment and tell them when you are available instead. When you've finished your fixed study appointment, finish on time. Even if you're feeling on a roll, stop. In fact, that's a really beneficial place to stop, as then you'll be able to pick it up again quickly and with more motivation in your next study appointment. Finally, I understand things can change on a daily or weekly basis, so do keep flexible. But you need to know the difference between an essential change to your schedule or wanting to take up a special opportunity versus a non-essential change. For example, that Netflix watching party that you could actually do at another time. Within your study appointments, you'll have to prioritize certain tasks over others. What's more urgent, what needs the most time, attention, etc. There are quite a few different approaches to prioritization, but it's often argued that the most effective technique is worst things first. That is, start with a task that you're dreading the most for whatever reason. It seems too hard, it's just not a fun topic, it's the most content-heavy subject, etc. The idea being that once you've done the hardest thing first, usually when you've got the most attention and energy, everything afterwards will seem more manageable in comparison. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Won't this approach just make me more resistant to starting work and thus more likely to lead to procrastination? Well, yes, this could happen, and I talk about overcoming procrastination later on. If this is the case, you could start with the easiest task to help get momentum in your work. Or another really great approach that I use is to do the thing that's closest to completion. This might not be the easiest task, but the sense of accomplishment can motivate you, and then you don't have to worry about finishing it later. One more comment on prioritization. A few years ago, I read a study which looked at how people versus computers, or artificial intelligence, prioritized tasks which were at an overwhelming level. So they were trying to figure out, when people have too many tasks and are overwhelmed, what's the best way of prioritizing? The good news is that it turns out it doesn't matter. There comes a point where if you've got so many tasks that are all highly urgent, it doesn't matter which one you start with. There's no benefit to trying to prioritize anymore. Literally pick a task at random. This was demonstrated in the study when the computers got stuck in a loop of trying to sort urgency and number of tasks. They couldn't solve it because every task was urgent, so they were stuck in a never-ending cycle. So there are two pieces of good news here. First, when you're really overwhelmed, just pick a task as that is the best option. And two, not even computers are 100% efficient at managing tasks. Our second topic explores how to stay focused. I research embodied cognition, which is the connection between cognitive and motor processes. One great way to keep yourself focused is to embody what you're learning in some way. This doesn't have to be huge, dynamic movement. It can be as subtle as handwriting your notes. Furthermore, research has shown that repetitive motions, like bouncing a tennis ball against a wall or alternating it between your hands, is a great way to maintain focus and really good for thinking up ideas. I also recommend changing posture. There is no such thing as the one ideal posture. The best posture is the next posture. You should be changing every 20 to 30 minutes. That's why I work to the Pomodoro technique of 25-minute blocks followed by a 5-minute break. For each new Pomodoro, I change position. That might be starting with my left leg tucked under as I sit on my chair and then changing to my right leg tucked under, or I might make a temporary standing desk for my laptop and then stretch out on the floor. This is closely related to the next tip of working in short bursts. Breaking down the day into small time slots keeps me motivated. The time passes quickly in the Pomodoro technique, but then at the end of the day, I see I've done 20 Pomodoros, and that feels like a great achievement. Sometimes I need to just hide or lock my phone. I have several different email accounts, personal, student, and work-related, so I can get stuck continuously checking them all. Make the temptation harder by putting your phone in a box on a high shelf, or use an app which locks you out of social media accounts for a set time. My final tip for staying focused is to find an accountability buddy. If you struggle to stay on task, pair up with someone who makes the decision to do work and you just have to follow along. This is important for if you're working with a group of friends. One person needs to be the leader and keep time to say, okay, time to stay on task, or stop for a break, and actually stick to the time limit. Focus is linked to motivation, which is our third topic. If you're feeling in a rut, one of the best ways I find my motivation again is by changing environment. Move from your room to a library or a communal space, or even within the library, try a new desk or area. Motivation can be sparked by the feeling of newness, so try a new physical location. Designating break and social times is a good reward for yourself. If you've planned to go for a walk at 3 p.m, you might feel more motivated to work in the morning because you have a treat coming later. That being said, if you do go off task, even for most of the day, don't let that stop you from doing something. Keep a save the day mentality. Say you ended up spending the whole day talking with friends. Don't end your day feeling guilty and pushing that aside. Save the day by doing even 15 minutes of work before going to sleep. Something is better than nothing. My last tip is something that I do a lot. It's to take a break halfway through something doable. I'm someone who can struggle with putting things off because I'm waiting for the right time to do it. I would convince myself that I should wait until the clock hits right on the hour to start my work, or I would think that it's not worth starting something because I'd just have to interrupt it to go to a meeting. Well, I now just embrace breaking halfway through my work with my personal theory that it's easier for me to leave a loose thread and pick it up later than it is to neatly finish writing a paragraph, take a break, and then have to decide what to begin next. If I know exactly what I'm going back to and that I only have to finish it off, I'm more motivated to do that than if I think, break's over, now what to do and where to start. It's less intimidating to pick up halfway through a loose end than it is to start a new one. I also suggest quantitative tracking of your goals and progress. For my own PhD writing, I make a list of the number of words I want to achieve and cross them off as I'm writing. You're awarded a gold star if you share your goal and progress with someone else, due to commitment and consistency, which is a principle that makes us automatically feel psychological pressure to follow through with any public commitment we make. Of course, you need to make sure it's a manageable goal, otherwise you could end up feeling worse if you fail. However, use that as an indication that you need to change your perceived study rate. That is, if you thought you could revise 3 topics in one session, but after actually trying it, you realize you can only do 2 subjects, reflect, reschedule, and keep moving forward. My final motivation tip is to give yourself a deadline that isn't your due date. Harvard researchers have found that time pressure significantly improves productivity. For example, if you have an essay to finish, set a timer for an hour and try to beat the clock. This technique shifts your focus to the race against time, which makes productivity feel less like a chore and more like a game. The feeling of succeeding or winning from gamifying tasks is linked to dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter molecule that influences brain pathways that are involved in motivation, movement, cognition, and reward-driven learning. Motivation is also associated with our 4th topic, procrastination. Research suggests that procrastination is not a time management problem. It's an emotional regulation issue of wanting to avoid the immediate urgency of negative reactions to perceived, overwhelming, or challenging tasks. Procrastinating by doing something else is just a way of coping with challenging emotions and negative moods from certain tasks. For example, thinking, "This is so boring, I'd rather do something fun," or "This makes me feel insecure about my abilities to write this essay, so let's do something else where I feel good about myself." So we procrastinate to manage the immediate urgency of the negative mood. And this has to do with what's called present bias, which is our hardwired tendency to prioritize short-term needs ahead of our long-term ones. We often don't associate our present self very closely with our future self. For example, I might think that future Simone will be far more capable than my present self if I wait a little bit longer. Try moving away from that pattern of thinking and accept that it's just a temporary and perhaps perceived feeling of inadequacy or other negative feeling as you start a task. I have a few solutions to getting around my own procrastination. First is to lower the expectation bar. For example, if I'm not feeling confident when I'm starting to write a new chapter of my PhD, or this might be your own essay if you're also studying, I allow myself to write poorly. In fact, I embrace it. I write down my thoughts as if I was having an informal conversation with myself. And in this free writing style, although there are many superfluous words and I'll need to edit the writing into an academic style, I've actually started the process of getting my work done. Rather than fussing over writing one perfect sentence, I write many rough sentences quickly, knowing that I can fix them later. This is also linked to the idea that you can always edit a bad page, but you can't edit a blank one. My next solution is the bigger, better offer. You have to find a better reward than avoidance, one that relieves the challenging feelings. You can choose to forgive yourself in the moments that you procrastinate. There was a study in 2010 that found students who were able to forgive themselves for procrastinating from studying for a first exam ended up procrastinating less when they studied for their next exam. I think this is related to the save the day mentality from the earlier topic on motivation. Another solution is to bring awareness to yourself when you procrastinate. Where do you feel it in your body? You might feel like turning your face or head away from the task, or feel a sinking sensation in your stomach, or an overall restlessness. Bringing awareness into your embodied experience can help to clarify what you might really be feeling. For example, overwhelmed. I use my next solution to overcome feeling overwhelmed, which is to consider the next action. This is a visualization task. Just imagine what you would do instead of procrastinating. So I tell myself, okay, I don't have to actually do it, but just think about what I would do. And I think, well, I'd go to my laptop, I'd open my PhD folder, find my latest manuscript, open it up, go to chapter 3 because I really need to do the most work there. I'd scroll down until I found the paragraph that I was last working on. I'd reread it, and then I'd write the next sentence. Then, just by thinking about it for that minute, suddenly it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And then I just follow my own orders. This follows on to the Japanese Kaizen philosophy, which I encourage you to see whether it is of interest or relevance. Kaizen roughly translates from Japanese meaning good change or improvement. It's not about change for change's sake, but about identifying particular goals, both short-term and long-term, and then making small, manageable steps to achieve those goals. It prioritizes changing things incrementally and even uses the 60-second rule for overcoming procrastination. So, say you've been putting off starting an essay, make yourself do it for just 60 seconds. You'll probably find that after 60 seconds, you've now started work and could complete, say, a 25-minute Pomodoro. It's an effective way of getting yourself started. My last tip is to consider how you would help a friend if they needed motivation or support to overcome procrastination. Chances are you'd probably be very supportive, use kind words, and made sure they finished their task. Try to treat yourself in the same way. Another similar tactic is to imagine separating yourself into two different people. One is the boss and the other is the employee. The boss makes the decisions on what to do and when you have to do it. They also support the employee to get their job done. You can implement the former strategy here as well and imagine that you are the boss and your friend is the employee. Again, think about how you would support and motivate your friend to finish the task and apply that to yourself. To wrap up, I'd like to highlight that these parts are constantly shifting and needing maintenance. You don't solve procrastination once. It's something that you face throughout life. Similarly, you'll have peaks and dips in motivation and might have to change strategies when other things happen, like a world pandemic. And that's okay because there are so many tips, hacks, and strategies out there that you can curate and create your own system of productivity, motivation, focus, and overcoming procrastination.